My name is Mason, and I am 32 years old. I thought I had found true love with Elizabeth, planning our dream wedding down to the last detail. Then her ex-boyfriend Ryan claimed he was deathly ill, and everything fell apart. Elizabeth gave me an ultimatum I will never forget. End the marriage, my ex-boyfriend is sick, and if you don't obey, then stay alone. I cut them all out of my life that day. 12 years passed before they tracked down my address and barged into my home uninvited. They had no idea what waited for them inside my house. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Chicago. My parents taught me the value of hard work from an early age. While my friends were spending summers at the pool, I was mowing lawns and saving every penny. By the time I finished high school, I had enough saved to help pay for my first year at Northwestern University. I worked nights as a campus security guard while studying computer science during the day. Sleep was a luxury I rarely enjoyed. During my senior year, I developed a security software that caught the attention of a few investors. After graduation, I launched my startup with their backing. The first 2 years were brutal: 18-hour days, ramen noodles for dinner, and a studio apartment barely big enough for a bed and desk. But slowly, things turned around. By my 28th birthday, my company had 30 employees and offices in Chicago and Seattle. I met Elizabeth at my best friend Daniel's 30th birthday party. She walked in wearing a blue dress that matched her eyes, and I immediately felt drawn to her. Daniel introduced us, mentioning that Elizabeth worked as a marketing executive for a major advertising firm downtown. Mason develops security software, Daniel explained. His company just landed that contract with the federal government. Impressive, Elizabeth said, offering her hand. Maybe you can explain how I can stop getting all these spam emails. We spent the next 3 hours in the corner of the party, talking about everything from childhood memories to career aspirations. Elizabeth had grown up in the suburbs of Boston, attended an Ivy League school, and had a sharp wit that kept me laughing all night. When the party ended, I asked for her number. I thought you would never ask. She smiled, entering her contact information into my phone. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant downtown. Elizabeth arrived 15 minutes late, apologizing profusely about a work emergency. She looked stunning in a simple black dress, her blonde hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. We ordered wine, shared appetizers, and talked until the restaurant staff began stacking chairs on tables. I have never connected with someone so quickly, she confessed as we walked to her car. Neither have I admitted, taking her hand in mine. Our relationship progressed naturally after that. We shared a love for old movies, hiking in the mountains, and trying new restaurants. Elizabeth introduced me to fine wines and classical music, while I taught her how to code basic HTML and appreciate science fiction novels. After 6 months, she moved into my downtown apartment, bringing with her a collection of art books and a temperamental cat named Oliver. For our 1-year anniversary, I planned a weekend trip to Napa Valley. We toured vineyards, took a hot air balloon ride at sunrise, and stayed at a charming bed and breakfast with views of the rolling hills. On our last night, over dinner beneath a canopy of stars, I realized I wanted to spend my life with her. I proposed 3 months later during a surprise trip to New York. I had arranged for a private dinner on a rooftop overlooking Central Park, complete with string quartet and champagne. When I dropped to one knee and opened the velvet box containing a 2-carat diamond ring, Elizabeth gasped. Yes, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. 1,000 times yes. The next year was a whirlwind of wedding planning. Elizabeth wanted a traditional ceremony at her family's church in Boston, followed by a reception at an exclusive country club. I was happy to agree to whatever made her happy, though I balked slightly at the guest list of 300 people, most of whom I had never met. They are important business connections for my parents, Elizabeth explained when I questioned the lengthy list. Dad has known most of these people for decades. I met Elizabeth's parents, Margaret and Robert, during a weekend visit to Boston. They lived in a sprawling colonial house in an affluent neighborhood, with perfectly manicured lawns and a 3-car garage. Robert was a prominent corporate attorney, while Margaret managed several charity foundations. They were polite but reserved during our first meeting, asking pointed questions about my business and family background. "Elizabeth mentioned you grew up in Chicago," Margaret said over dinner. "Which neighborhood?" When I named my decidedly middle-class area, she exchanged a quick glance with Robert. "And your parents? What do they do?" Robert asked. "My dad works as a high school math teacher, and my mom is a nurse at Cook County Hospital," I replied proudly. "How noble," Margaret commented, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Despite their cool reception, Elizabeth assured me they were just protective and would warm up to me eventually. I wanted to believe her, but during subsequent visits, I noticed they often made subtle comparisons between me and someone named Ryan. Ryan's family has been members of the club for generations, Robert mentioned when discussing wedding venue options. Elizabeth and Ryan always talked about a honeymoon in the Maldives, Margaret said when we announced our plans to visit the islands after our wedding. When I finally asked Elizabeth about Ryan, she sighed. "He was my college boyfriend. We dated for 5 years, but grew apart after graduation. He took a job in London, and I stayed in Boston. The distance was too much. Your parents seemed to think highly of him," I observed. "They were close with his family." She shrugged. "But that relationship is in the past. I am with you now." I tried to dismiss my insecurities about Ryan. Elizabeth had chosen me, after all. We were planning a future together, looking at houses in the suburbs with good school districts, discussing how many children we wanted, and combining our financial portfolios. 2 weeks before our wedding, we were finalizing the last details. The venue was booked, invitations sent, my tuxedo fitted, and her gown altered to perfection. Elizabeth had chosen a 7-tier cake with hand-crafted sugar flowers, and I had surprised her by hiring her favorite band to play at the reception. Everything was falling into place for our perfect day. Daniel invited me for drinks after work one evening. As we sat in a quiet corner of the bar, he seemed unusually serious. "I need to tell you something, and you might not want to hear it," he began. "What is it?" I asked, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "My sister works with Elizabeth's friend Jennifer," he said. She overheard Jennifer talking about Elizabeth meeting with her ex-boyfriend recently. "Someone named Ryan. That cannot be right," I said, shaking my head. "Ryan lives in London. Apparently he moved back last month," Daniel continued. "I would not mention it, but Jennifer said they have been meeting regularly for coffee." I thanked Daniel for his honesty but assured him there must be an innocent explanation. Elizabeth and I had built our relationship on trust and communication. If Ryan was back in town, surely she would have mentioned it. That night, I casually asked Elizabeth if she had heard from any old friends recently. "Not really," she replied, focused on her laptop. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious," I said, watching her face for any sign of deception. "With the wedding coming up, I thought maybe old acquaintances might be reaching out." She smiled and kissed my cheek. "You are the only person I am thinking about right now." I wanted to believe her, but a seed of doubt had been planted. Exactly 13 days before our wedding, I noticed a change in Elizabeth. She became distracted during conversations, constantly checking her phone, and disappearing into another room to take calls. When I asked who kept texting her, she claimed it was wedding vendors confirming details. One morning, while Elizabeth was in the shower, her phone buzzed repeatedly on the nightstand. I normally would never invade her privacy, but something made me glance at the screen. A text preview from someone named Ryan flashed. "Doctor's appointment went poorly. Need to see you today. Please." My heart raced as I heard the shower turn off. I placed the phone back exactly as I had found it, and pretended to be reading emails when Elizabeth emerged wrapped in a towel. "I have to run into the office for a few hours," she announced, getting dressed quickly. Last-minute presentation for a potential client. On a Saturday? I questioned. 2 weeks before our wedding? You know how it is, she sighed, applying makeup with unusual speed. Marketing never sleeps. I should be back by dinner. After she left, I paced our apartment, trying to make sense of what I had seen. Could Ryan truly be sick? Why would he contact Elizabeth rather than family or friends? And why had Elizabeth lied about where she was going? When she returned home after 7 that evening, I could smell unfamiliar cologne on her jacket. Her eyes were puffy as though she had been crying. How was the presentation? I asked casually. Exhausting, she replied, avoiding my gaze. The clients were impossible to please. That is too bad, I said. Which company was it again? Elizabeth hesitated for a fraction of a second. Bennett Industries. They are looking to rebrand their corporate image. I nodded, knowing there was no such client listed on her firm's website, which I had checked that afternoon. Over the next few days, Elizabeth grew increasingly distant. She spent hours on the phone in our bedroom with the door closed, made vague excuses to leave the house, and seemed distracted during our final wedding planning meetings. When the florist asked a question about centerpieces, Elizabeth stared blankly until I answered for her. Is everything okay? I asked that night as we prepared for bed. You seem a million miles away lately. Just wedding stress, she replied, not meeting my eyes. And work has been crazy. Elizabeth, I said gently, taking her hands in mine. If something is wrong, you can tell me. Whatever it is, we can face it together. For a moment, she looked as though she might confess. Then her phone buzzed, and she pulled away to check it. I have to take this, she murmured, walking into the bathroom and closing the door. The next morning, I called Daniel and asked him to meet me for coffee before work. Ryan is back, I confirmed, my voice hollow. And something is definitely going on. Elizabeth has been lying about where she goes and who she talks to. Have you confronted her? Daniel asked. Not yet, I admitted. Part of me is afraid of what I will learn. You deserve the truth, Mason, he said firmly. Especially with the wedding so close. That evening, I planned to have an honest conversation with Elizabeth. I picked up her favorite takeout and a bottle of wine, hoping to create a relaxed atmosphere for discussion. But when I arrived home, I found a note saying she had gone to visit her friend Jennifer and would be back late. Remembering that Jennifer was the friend Daniel's sister had mentioned, I made a decision I am not proud of. I drove to Jennifer's apartment building and waited in the parking lot. After an hour, I spotted Elizabeth's car parked 2 blocks away. But instead of entering Jennifer's building, Elizabeth walked to a nearby restaurant and met a tall man with dark hair who embraced her tightly before leading her inside. I sat in my car, feeling physically ill as I watched them through the restaurant window. They talked intently, hands occasionally touching across the table. At one point, Elizabeth wiped tears from her eyes and the man, who I presumed was Ryan, reached over to stroke her cheek. I drove home in a daze, the untouched takeout containers and wine bottle mocking me from the passenger seat. When Elizabeth returned around midnight, I pretended to be asleep, unable to confront what I had witnessed. The next day, I received an unexpected call from the caterers saying they had been instructed to reduce our wedding dinner from filet mignon to chicken. When I questioned Elizabeth about this, she seemed surprised. I thought we agreed beef was too expensive, she said. We agreed on the filet 2 months ago, I replied, confused. The contract is signed. Well, I changed my mind, she snapped, uncharacteristically irritable. Is that allowed? Later that day, the wedding planner called to confirm we were now having a string quartet instead of the band I had booked as a surprise. Elizabeth called yesterday, the planner explained. She said you both decided the band was too loud for the venue. One by one, details of our wedding began to change or disappear altogether. The honeymoon was shortened from 2 weeks to 1. The guest list mysteriously shrank by 50 names, all from my side. The wedding cake was downgraded from 7 tiers to 3. When I tried to discuss these changes with Elizabeth, she either claimed not to remember our original plans or insisted the new arrangements were more practical. Meanwhile, her absences grew more frequent, and her explanations more implausible. 3 days before our wedding, I received a call from the venue coordinator. "I wanted to confirm your cancellation," she said. "Cancellation?" I echoed, my blood running cold. "There must be some mistake." "Mess." "Walker called this morning to cancel the event," the coordinator explained. "She said you would be contacting us about the deposit." I drove home immediately, finding Elizabeth in our bedroom packing a suitcase. "The venue says you canceled our wedding," I said from the doorway, my voice surprisingly calm despite the storm raging inside me. Elizabeth froze, then slowly turned to face me. Her expression was a mixture of guilt and determination. "I was going to tell you tonight," she said. "Tell me what exactly?" I demanded, stepping into the room. "The wedding is off," she stated, her voice flat. "Ryan needs me." "Ryan," I repeated. "Your ex-boyfriend who suddenly reappeared 2 weeks before our wedding. He is sick, Mason," she insisted, tears forming in her eyes. "Really sick. The doctors found a tumor. He might not have much time left. And that justifies canceling our wedding without even discussing it with me?" I asked incredulously. "You would not understand," she sighed. "Ryan and I have history. His parents are like family to me. I cannot abandon him now." "What about our history?" I shouted, my composure finally breaking. "What about the life we planned together? The home we were going to build?" Before Elizabeth could respond, the doorbell rang. She glanced at her watch and grimaced. "That is my parents," she said. "They came to help me move my things." I watched in disbelief as she opened the door to Margaret and Robert, who stood in our hallway looking grim but determined. "Mason," Robert acknowledged stiffly. "Elizabeth told us about the situation." "What situation?" I demanded. "The one where she is abandoning our relationship for an ex-boyfriend days before our wedding?" "Ryan is gravely ill," Margaret said coldly. "He needs Elizabeth's support during this difficult time. Surely even you can understand that." "Even me?" I repeated. "What is that supposed to mean?" "We always knew Elizabeth was making a mistake with this rushed engagement," Robert stated, moving past me to help with the suitcases. "Ryan is her true match. They have the same background, the same values. And the same trust fund, I assume." I spat bitterly. Elizabeth emerged from the bedroom with her suitcase. "I'm sorry, Mason. I truly thought I could make this work with you." "And now?" I asked, my voice breaking. She lifted her chin defiantly. "Now you have a choice. End the marriage plans gracefully and wish me well, or be difficult and stay alone. Either way, I am going to Ryan." "You cannot be serious," I whispered, feeling as though the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. "She is entirely serious," Margaret interjected. "And frankly, you should be grateful this realization came before the wedding rather than after." The three of them stood united against me in the apartment I had shared with Elizabeth for over a year, surrounded by our joint possessions and photographs documenting our relationship. "Get out," I said quietly, then louder. "Get out of my home. All of you." "Mason, please understand," Elizabeth began, but I cut her off. "There is nothing to understand. You made your choice. Now leave." After they departed with Elizabeth's essential belongings, promising to return for the rest later, I sat alone in our half-empty apartment, trying to process what had happened. The wedding I had been planning for a year was cancelled. The woman I thought I would spend my life with had chosen someone else. And I was expected to accept this betrayal with grace and understanding. The next day, I faced the humiliating task of informing our guests that the wedding was cancelled. Many asked for explanations I could not provide. My parents flew in from Chicago to support me, their concern and anger on my behalf both comforting and painful to witness. "You deserve better, son," my father said, helping me box up Elizabeth's remaining possessions for her parents to collect. A week after the cancellation, Daniel came by with information that made the betrayal even more acute. "My sister ran into Jennifer at work," he said hesitantly. "Ryan is not sick, Mason. The whole illness was fabricated to get Elizabeth back. Jennifer let it slip after too many drinks at the office happy hour." I stared at him, the full weight of the deception crushing me. "Are you absolutely certain?" "Jennifer confirmed it." Daniel nodded grimly. "Ryan never had a tumor. He returned from London specifically to win Elizabeth back before your wedding. And her parents were apparently in on the plan from the beginning." The final blow came when I learned through social media that Elizabeth had moved in with Ryan immediately after leaving me. Photos showed them together at a restaurant, her head on his shoulder, her engagement ring, my ring, conspicuously absent from her finger. I blocked Elizabeth, her parents, and all their mutual friends on every platform. I changed my phone number and email address. I wanted no reminders of the woman who had systematically dismantled my heart and discarded the pieces. The months following Elizabeth's betrayal were the darkest of my life. I moved out of our apartment, unable to stay surrounded by the ghost of our relationship. I found a small studio across town, bare and impersonal, but mercifully free of memories. Most mornings, I could barely force myself out of bed. My company suffered as I withdrew from daily operations, leaving my employees confused and concerned. I lost 15 pounds in the first month, food tasting like ashes in my mouth. Sleep became an elusive luxury, replaced by endless loops of remembered conversations and missed warning signs. The engagement ring I had purchased, 3 months' salary and countless hours selecting the perfect diamond, sat in its velvet box on my dresser, a daily reminder of my failed future. Finally, I sold it to a pawnshop for a fraction of its value, just to be rid of the sight of it. My parents suggested I return to Chicago, to heal surrounded by family and childhood friends. But I refused, irrationally convinced that leaving Boston would somehow represent another defeat. 6 weeks after the cancelled wedding, at Daniel's insistence, I attended my first therapy session. Dr. Miranda Lewis specialized in trauma and betrayal, her office a soothing space of muted colors and comfortable furniture. "What do you hope to gain from therapy, Mason?" she asked during our initial meeting. "I want to stop feeling like this," I replied honestly. "Like my life ended the day Elizabeth left." "Your life did not end," Dr. Lewis said gently. "But a future you had envisioned did. There is an important distinction there." Over the next several months, our weekly sessions became an anchor in my unmoored existence. Dr. Lewis helped me identify patterns in my relationship with Elizabeth that I had overlooked. Her tendency to make decisions unilaterally, my willingness to compromise my own desires to please her, the subtle power imbalance that had always existed between us. "You believed you were not good enough for her," Dr. Lewis observed during one particularly painful session. "And she exploited that belief." "Her parents certainly thought I was not good enough," I admitted. "But what do you think, Mason? Were you not good enough, or simply not from the right social circle?" That question lingered with me for days afterward, forcing me to reevaluate not just my relationship with Elizabeth, but my perception of myself. A breakthrough came during our 4th month of therapy. I arrived at Dr. Lewis's office in a state of agitation after dreaming about Elizabeth the night before. "I saw her with Ryan," I explained. "They were happy, planning their own wedding. And in the dream, I felt relief." "Relief?" Dr. Lewis echoed. "Yes," I said, surprised by my own realization. "Relief that it was him standing at the altar with her instead of me. Relief that I had escaped a lifetime with someone who could discard me so easily." Dr. Lewis smiled. "That sounds like progress to me." Gradually, I began to re-engage with my life. I returned to my company with renewed focus, channeling my pain into productive work. We launched a new security product that garnered industry attention and doubled our client base within months. Despite my professional resurgence, I knew I needed a complete change of environment. Boston held too many memories, too many places Elizabeth and I had visited together. After careful consideration, I decided to relocate my company headquarters to Seattle, where we already had a satellite office. The move west represented a fresh start. I purchased a modern apartment overlooking Puget Sound, filled it with furniture that reflected my own taste rather than the compromised style Elizabeth and I had developed, and established new routines that had no connection to my previous life. In Seattle, I reconnected with an old college friend, Tyler, who had moved there years earlier to work for a major tech company. Tyler introduced me to his circle of friends, outdoorsy professionals who spent weekends hiking mountain trails or sailing on the Sound. "You seem different than I remember from college," Tyler observed during a camping trip to Olympic National Park. "Different how?" I asked, poking at our campfire with a stick. "More serious," he replied. "But also more substantial, somehow. Like you have been through something that forced you to figure out who you really are." His observation struck me as profoundly true. The pain of Elizabeth's betrayal had stripped away my illusions about relationships, about myself, about what truly mattered in life. In rebuilding myself, I had discovered a resilience and clarity I had not possessed before. 6 months after moving to Seattle, Tyler approached me with a business proposition. He had developed an innovative authentication protocol that would complement my company's security software. He proposed a partnership that would combine our technologies into a comprehensive security platform. I hesitated initially, wary of entangling my business with personal relationships after my experience with Elizabeth. But Tyler's proposal made sound business sense, and after thorough due diligence, I agreed. We merged our operations, with Tyler becoming my co-CTO and taking an equity stake in the expanded company. Our partnership proved successful beyond either of our expectations. Within a year, we had secured contracts with 3 major tech companies and were in talks with the Department of Defense about cybersecurity applications. During this period of professional success, I attempted a relationship with Vanessa, a graphic designer who worked for a marketing firm handling our company's rebranding. She was intelligent, creative, and seemingly interested in building something meaningful together. But 2 months into dating, I realized I was approaching our relationship with unhealthy caution, constantly looking for signs of deception or betrayal where none existed. When Vanessa canceled dinner plans due to a work emergency, I found myself checking her social media accounts to verify her whereabouts. When she mentioned a male colleague, I experienced irrational jealousy and suspicion. "I am not ready for this," I admitted to her one evening. "You deserve someone who can trust without questioning, and right now, that is not me." Vanessa was disappointed but understanding. "Your ex did a number on you," she observed. "When you have worked through that, give me a call." We parted amicably, and I returned to therapy with a local practitioner, Dr. Garrett Evans, who specialized in trust issues following relationship trauma. "Trust is like a muscle," Dr. Evans explained during our sessions. "Elizabeth's betrayal caused a serious injury to that muscle. Now you are afraid to use it again for fear of re-injury. But muscles that are not used eventually atrophy. So what is the solution?" I asked. "Rehabilitation," he replied simply. "Gradual, intentional practice in safe environments." Following Dr. Evans's guidance, I began rebuilding my capacity for trust in small, manageable ways. I delegated important projects to employees without micromanaging. I loaned books to friends without obsessing over their return. I shared personal stories with Tyler and other close friends, making myself vulnerable in controlled circumstances. I also focused on developing activities I could enjoy alone. I took cooking classes, learning to prepare elaborate meals for my own pleasure. I joined a hiking group that explored the Cascade Mountains on weekends. I volunteered at a local animal shelter, finding solace in the uncomplicated affection of abandoned dogs and cats. The first holiday season after the breakup had been unbearable. I had worked through Christmas and New Year's, avoiding family gatherings and festive events that would only highlight my solitude. But the second holiday season, I flew home to Chicago and immersed myself in family traditions. My parents had wisely invited no single women my age, allowing me to simply enjoy the comfort of familiar rituals without pressure or expectations. As my second year in Seattle drew to a close, Tyler approached me with another proposition. He had been volunteering with an organization that taught coding skills to underprivileged youth and suggested our company establish a foundation to expand these efforts. "We have been fortunate," he pointed out. "Maybe it is time to create opportunities for kids who have not had our advantages." The idea resonated deeply with me. Within months, we had established the Future Coders Foundation, providing scholarships, equipment, and mentoring to promising students from low-income neighborhoods. I found unexpected fulfillment in working with these young people, many of whom had overcome significant obstacles just to access basic education. One evening, after a particularly successful mentoring session with a gifted 17-year-old named Marcus, I realized something profound. The pain Elizabeth had caused me, which once seemed unbearable, had receded to a dull ache. In its place had grown a life of meaning and purpose entirely separate from romantic relationships. "Maybe she did me a favor," I mused to Tyler as we locked up the foundation's office. "If we had married, I would have spent my life trying to please someone who was never fully committed to me." "Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best places," Tyler agreed. "But that does not excuse what she did." "No," I acknowledged. "It does not. But I am finally ready to be grateful for where I ended up, regardless of how I got here." 3 years after moving to Seattle, I attended a charity gala for the Children's Hospital. Our foundation had donated a computer lab for long-term patients, and I was there to present the ceremonial check. The event was held at the Four Seasons, the ballroom transformed into a starlit garden with twinkling lights and fragrant flowers. I was reviewing my brief speech when someone bumped into me, nearly spilling champagne on my tuxedo. "I am so sorry," a woman's voice exclaimed. "These heels were a terrible idea on this slippery floor." I turned to find myself face to face with one of the most striking women I had ever seen. She had warm brown eyes, dark hair swept into an elegant updo, and a smile that transformed her entire face. "No harm done," I assured her, offering my hand. "Mason Bennett." "Dr. Sophia Rodriguez," she replied, her handshake firm and confident. "Pediatric neurosurgeon. I work with many of the children who will benefit from your foundation's donation." We spent the next hour in conversation, missing most of the formal program. Sophia had grown up in a working-class neighborhood in Los Angeles, the daughter of immigrants who emphasized education above all else. She had worked her way through college and medical school, eventually specializing in pediatric neurosurgery because, as she put it, "Children's brains are remarkably resilient if given the right support." When it was time for my presentation, Sophia wished me luck with a gentle squeeze of my arm. After the gala, as guests were dispersing, I found her waiting near the coat check. "I thought you might want to continue our conversation sometime," she said directly. "Perhaps over dinner?" Her forwardness surprised and delighted me. "I would like that very much," I replied, taking out my phone to exchange contact information. For our first date, we met at a small Spanish restaurant near the hospital. Sophia arrived in jeans and a simple blouse, her hair loose around her shoulders, looking somehow more beautiful than she had in formal wear at the gala. "Sorry for the casual attire," she apologized. "I came straight from a 36-hour shift." "You look perfect," I told her honestly. Over paella and sangria, we shared more of our backgrounds. Sophia had been briefly married during medical school to a fellow student who ultimately could not handle her demanding schedule and ambition. "He wanted me to switch to a less demanding specialty," she explained. "When I refused, he gave me an ultimatum. Medicine or marriage. I know something about ultimatums," I said grimly, then hesitated. "I should probably tell you about my past relationship before we go any further." Sophia listened intently as I summarized my history with Elizabeth, her betrayal, and my subsequent journey. I expected to see pity in her eyes, but instead found understanding and quiet anger on my behalf. "What a terrible thing to do to someone you claim to love," she said when I finished. Thank you for trusting me with that story. Trust does not come easily to me anymore, I admitted. Then I am honored by it, she replied simply. And I promise to be worthy of it. Dating Sophia was unlike any relationship I had experienced before. Her demanding schedule as a surgeon meant our time together was limited but intensely valued. We learned to make the most of unexpected free hours, meeting for late dinners after her shifts or early breakfasts before my meetings. Sophia's directness was refreshing after Elizabeth's manipulations. When something bothered her, she addressed it immediately. When she wanted something, she asked for it clearly. There were no games, no hidden agendas, no subtle power struggles. 3 months into our relationship, I invited Sophia to join me for a weekend at a cabin in the Cascade Mountains. As we hiked through old-growth forests and cooked simple meals in the rustic kitchen, I found myself relaxing completely in her presence. On our last evening, as we sat beside a crackling fire, Sophia turned to me with serious eyes. I am falling in love with you, Mason, she stated in her characteristic straightforward manner. I thought you should know. The declaration should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a profound sense of rightness. I love you too, I replied, the words coming easily. And that terrifies and exhilarates me in equal measure. She laughed, the sound warming me more than the fire. That seems like the appropriate response to love. Meeting Sophia's family further confirmed the differences between my past and present relationships. The Rodriguez family welcomed me with enthusiastic warmth at their weekly Sunday dinner. Sophia's parents, Miguel and Elena, her 3 brothers, and various aunts, uncles, and cousins engulfed me in conversation, food, and genuine interest. You make our Sophia smile, Elena told me as I helped her wash dishes after dinner. That is all we have ever wanted for her. She makes me smile too, I replied, realizing how true that was. Sophia met my parents during their visit to Seattle the following month. My mother pulled me aside after dinner at my apartment. This one is the real deal, she whispered, nodding towards Sophia, who was deep in conversation with my father about the Chicago Cubs' prospects for the upcoming season. I have never seen you so at ease with anyone. As our relationship deepened, we navigated the inevitable challenges with honest communication. When Sophia was offered a prestigious fellowship that would require extensive travel, we discussed the implications openly. I want this opportunity, she said. But I also want our relationship to thrive. I need to know if you think we can manage both. Instead of responding with insecurity as I might have in the past, I considered the question thoughtfully. It will be difficult, I acknowledged. But your career is part of who you are, and I love who you are. We will make it work. The fellowship lasted 6 months, during which we maintained our connection through nightly video calls and weekend visits whenever possible. Rather than weakening our relationship, the separation strengthened it, confirming that what we had built could withstand challenges. When Sophia returned permanently to Seattle, I was ready to take the next step. I proposed at the Children's Hospital, in the computer lab our foundation had funded, surrounded by young patients who helped me hold signs spelling out, "Will you marry me?" as Sophia completed her rounds. Her expression of shock followed by radiant joy is forever etched in my memory. Yes. She laughed through happy tears. Of course, yes. We decided on a small wedding ceremony unlike the elaborate event I had once planned with Elizabeth. We were married at a boutique hotel overlooking Puget Sound, with only 50 guests including close family and friends. Sophia wore an elegant sheath dress, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers. I found myself emotional throughout the ceremony, overcome by gratitude for the journey that had led me to this woman and this moment. Our honeymoon was a 2-week exploration of Spain, visiting Barcelona, Madrid, and small coastal villages. We wandered through art museums, ate at local restaurants, and spent lazy mornings in bed talking about our future together. 1 year into our marriage, Sophia announced she was pregnant. The news filled me with equal parts joy and terror. What if I am not good at this? I worried aloud as we lay in bed, my hand resting on her still flat stomach. You will be, she assured me. We both will. And when we are not, we will figure it out together. Emma Grace Bennett was born after 36 hours of labor, during which Sophia demonstrated a strength that left me in awe. Holding my daughter for the first time, this tiny, perfect being with Sophia's dark hair and my green eyes, I experienced love of an entirely different magnitude. 2 years later, we welcomed Noah Miguel Bennett, completing our family. As we adjusted to life with 2 young children, Sophia and I became a seamless team, adapting our careers and schedules to prioritize our family while maintaining our professional commitments. With 2 children and expanding careers, our apartment began to feel cramped. We purchased a spacious craftsman-style home in a family-friendly neighborhood with excellent schools. The house needed substantial renovation, a project we tackled together over the course of a year, creating a home that perfectly suited our needs and reflected our combined aesthetic. Sunday mornings became sacred family time, with pancake breakfasts and outings to parks or museums. We established annual traditions: summer camping trips to Olympic National Park, Thanksgiving volunteering at homeless shelters, and Christmas celebrations alternating between Chicago and Los Angeles to include both extended families. My company continued to thrive, expanding internationally with offices in London, Singapore, and Toronto. The Future Coders Foundation grew as well, establishing programs in 20 cities across the country and providing scholarships to hundreds of students annually. 5 years into our marriage, during a rare date night at an upscale restaurant downtown, I glanced across the room and froze. Elizabeth sat at a corner table with a man who was definitely not Ryan. She looked older, of course, but still recognizable. For a moment, I waited for the familiar pain to resurface. Instead, I felt nothing. No anger, no hurt, no longing. Just a detached acknowledgement of a person from my past who no longer held any power over my present. "Everything okay?" Sophia asked, noticing my distraction. I smiled at my wife, this extraordinary woman who had helped me build a life beyond anything I could have imagined during those dark days after Elizabeth's betrayal. "Everything is perfect," I replied truthfully, returning my full attention to where it belonged. It was a typical Sunday morning in the Bennett household. Emma, now 8, was helping Sophia make her famous blueberry pancakes, while 5-year-old Noah and I were engaged in an intense Lego building competition in the living room. "Dad, you cannot put the red piece there," Noah protested. "It ruins the spaceship design." "My apologies, Chief Engineer," I laughed, removing the offending brick. "What was I thinking?" The doorbell rang, an unusual occurrence at 9:30 on a Sunday morning. Noah jumped up, always excited by unexpected visitors. "I will get it," he announced, racing toward the door. "Hold on, buddy," I called, following him. "Let me check who it is first." Through the peephole, I saw 3 people standing on our porch: a middle-aged woman with blonde hair streaked with gray, an older man with stooped shoulders, and between them, a woman I had not seen in 12 years but would recognize anywhere. My heart hammered in my chest as I opened the door, positioning myself to block Noah from view. "Mason," Elizabeth said, her voice exactly as I remembered. "It has been a long time." She looked older, with fine lines around her eyes and mouth. Her once perfectly highlighted hair was dull, her expensive clothes replaced by a plain blouse and slacks that had seen better days. Beside her, Margaret and Robert had aged dramatically, their formerly proud postures now bent with what appeared to be the weight of difficult years. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my tone neutral but firm. "How did you find my address?" "We saw an article about your company in the business section," Robert explained, his voice lacking the condescending tone I remembered. "It mentioned you lived in Seattle." The rest was persistence. "Dad, who is it?" Noah called from behind me, trying to peek around my legs. Elizabeth's eyes widened at the sound of the child's voice. Before I could respond, Sophia appeared in the hallway, Emma at her side. "Mason? Is everything okay?" she asked, wiping her hands on a dish towel as she approached. I turned slightly. "We have unexpected visitors. Elizabeth and her parents." Sophia's expression remained composed, though I noticed her shoulders tense. She had heard the full story of my past and understood exactly who these people were. I see, she said calmly, placing a protective hand on Noah's shoulder. Kids, why don't you go upstairs to the playroom for a bit? Dad and I need to talk with these people. But the pancakes, Emma protested. We will finish them after, Sophia promised. Take your brother upstairs, please. Once the children had reluctantly departed, I faced our unwelcome visitors again. You have 30 seconds to explain why you are on my doorstep after 12 years of silence, I stated. Elizabeth swallowed visibly. May we come in? Please? What we need to discuss is private. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside to allow them entry. The three of them moved past me into the foyer, their eyes darting around, taking in the family photos lining the walls, the children's artwork proudly displayed, the obvious signs of a happy, stable home. You have a beautiful family, Elizabeth said softly as Sophia joined me, slipping her hand into mine. Thank you, Sophia replied with cool politeness. I am Sophia Bennett, Mason's wife. Elizabeth Walker, she replied, then corrected herself. Elizabeth Morris, I mean. Though I am back to Walker now. I led them to the living room, where Noah's and my abandoned Lego projects sat on the coffee table. The three visitors perched uncomfortably on the edge of our sofa while Sophia and I took the adjacent love seat. Why are you here? I repeated. Elizabeth exchanged glances with her parents before speaking. We need your help, Mason. My help? I echoed incredulously. After what you did? Margaret leaned forward. We know we have no right to ask anything of you. What happened was inexcusable. Yet here you are asking, Sophia observed, her tone professional but cold. Ryan left me, Elizabeth blurted, tears immediately filling her eyes. 3 months ago. For my friend Allison. She is 15 years younger than me. I felt Sophia's hand tighten around mine but remained silent, waiting. After I left you, Elizabeth continued, Ryan and I got married 6 months later. His illness miraculously cured. We had what looked like a perfect life for a while. His family, money, our social connections. But appearances can be deceiving, Robert interjected bitterly. Ryan turned out to be a terrible businessman and an even worse husband to our daughter. He controlled everything, Elizabeth explained, wiping at her tears. My friends, my schedule, our finances. I was not allowed to work. Then he started having affairs, not even bothering to hide them. And your parents? I asked, looking at Margaret and Robert. Were they not the safety net you abandoned me for? Margaret looked down at her hands. We invested everything in Ryan's business ventures. He was very persuasive. When his tech startup failed last year, we lost our home, our savings, everything. So you came to me, I concluded, the irony almost painful. The man you all deemed not good enough for your family, not worthy of basic human decency. We have nowhere else to turn, Elizabeth admitted. We need a loan to get back on our feet. $50,000. We will pay you back, I swear. I stared at them in disbelief. These people had shattered my world, cancelled my wedding days before the ceremony, humiliated me in front of friends and family, all for a man who had ultimately betrayed them just as thoroughly. Let me make sure I understand, I said slowly. You tracked down my address, showed up unannounced at my home, interrupted my family's Sunday morning, all to ask for money? We are desperate, Robert pleaded, all traces of his former arrogance gone. The bank is foreclosing on the last property we own. We will be homeless in 30 days. And you thought I would help you because... I let the question hang in the air. Because you loved me once, Elizabeth whispered. And because you are a good man, Mason. You always were. Much better than Ryan could ever be. I realized that too late. Sophia stood abruptly. I am going to check on the children. Mason, take all the time you need. The look she gave me conveyed complete trust in whatever decision I might make. After she left, I studied the three people before me. They appeared genuinely broken, their expensive clothes from years ago replaced by worn, slightly shabby attire. Elizabeth's once perfectly manicured hands were bare of jewelry, her nails short and unpolished. "What did you expect to find when you came here today?" I asked. Elizabeth looked confused. "What do you mean? Did you expect me to be alone? Still heartbroken over your betrayal? Waiting for you to return?" She had the grace to look ashamed. "I did not know what to expect. The article mentioned your professional success but nothing about your personal life. We were shocked to see you had children," Margaret admitted. "Somehow I always pictured you alone in some apartment, focused on your career. Because that was easier than acknowledging the pain you caused," I observed. "If I was alone and miserable, your actions could be justified as ultimately for the best." "Were we wrong?" Robert asked, looking around at the evident signs of my happiness. "Did your life turn out better without Elizabeth?" The question struck me as both profound and utterly self-serving. Before I could respond, Emma appeared in the doorway. "Dad? Noah is asking when we can finish the pancakes," she said, her eyes curiously examining our visitors. "Soon, sweetheart," I promised. "Please go back upstairs for just a few more minutes." As Emma departed, Elizabeth wiped fresh tears. "She looks like you. Same eyes." "Emma has her mother's intelligence and compassion," I replied. "And Noah has her determination." I took a deep breath, centering myself. "I need to be very clear about something. The three of you showing up like this is completely inappropriate. You have no place in my life anymore. That was your choice 12 years ago." "We know," Elizabeth whispered. "We just had nowhere else to turn." Looking at their desperate faces, I felt no satisfaction in their misfortune, only a profound gratitude for the path my own life had taken. "Before I decide anything," I said, carefully controlling my voice, "I want the complete truth. No more manipulation, no more lies." Elizabeth glanced at her parents, then nodded. "What do you want to know? Ryan was never sick, was he?" I asked, though I already knew the answer from what Daniel had discovered years ago. "No," Elizabeth admitted, staring at her hands. "He moved back from London specifically to win me back before the wedding. He knew I was having doubts. Doubts you never shared with me," I interrupted. "I should have," she acknowledged. "Instead, I kept them to myself, trying to convince myself that what we had was enough." "Enough compared to what?" I pressed. "Compared to what I had with Ryan," she said softly. "The excitement, the passion, the shared background. Our families had always expected us to end up together. So the elaborate lie about his illness? His idea," Margaret interjected. "He said it was the only way to make Elizabeth realize what she truly wanted before it was too late." "And you supported this deception?" I asked, directing my question to her parents. Robert shifted uncomfortably. "We believed Ryan was the better match. His family had connections that could advance my law practice. Their social standing complemented ours. In other words," I summarized, "I was not wealthy enough, not connected enough, not from the right family." "Yes," Margaret admitted baldly. "We were wrong, Mason. Catastrophically wrong." Elizabeth leaned forward. "After I left you, I regretted it almost immediately. But pride kept me from admitting my mistake. Then Ryan proposed with a ring twice the size of yours, and my parents were so pleased. So you married him," I concluded. "6 months after leaving you," she confirmed. "We had the grand wedding my parents always wanted for me. 300 guests at the Plaza Hotel in New York." "But do you know what I remember most about that day?" I waited silently. "Wishing it was you waiting at the altar," she whispered. "Knowing in my heart I had made a terrible mistake. Yet you stayed with him for over a decade," I observed. "At first it seemed perfect," Elizabeth explained. "The beautiful home in Boston, the summer house on Martha's Vineyard, the social events. But Ryan changed once we were married. He became controlling, monitoring my friends, my activities, even my clothing choices. When did the affairs start? I asked. The 3rd year of our marriage, she replied, her voice hollow. I found messages on his phone. When I confronted him, he did not even deny it. He said it meant nothing, that it was normal for successful men to have distractions. And you accepted this? I stated rather than asked. I had nowhere to go, Elizabeth said defensively. My parents had invested everything in Ryan's businesses by then. Their retirement, their savings, even taking a mortgage on their home to fund his startup. Robert cleared his throat. We believed in Ryan's business acumen. He talked about returns of 10 times our investment within 5 years. Instead, he lost everything. Margaret added bitterly. The company collapsed last year amid allegations of mismanagement and possible fraud. Then 3 months ago, Elizabeth continued, Ryan announced he was leaving me for my friend Allison. She is 28. He had been seeing her for over a year. So you came looking for me, I concluded, hoping I would solve your financial problems. We had no one else to ask, Robert said. Our friends abandoned us when we lost our social standing. Our relatives have their own financial struggles. And you assumed I would help because... I left the question hanging again. Elizabeth met my eyes directly for the first time. Because despite what we did to you, I remember your character, Mason. Your fundamental decency. The man I knew would not turn away someone in genuine need, even someone who had hurt him deeply. Her words struck uncomfortably close to the truth. The person I had become would indeed find it difficult to turn away someone truly in need, regardless of our history. But I also recognized the manipulation in her appeal to my better nature. You hurt me more deeply than I thought possible, I said quietly. For months after you left, I could barely function. I questioned everything about myself, wondering what fundamental flaw made me unworthy of basic honesty and respect. There was no flaw, Elizabeth whispered. The flaw was in me, in my weakness and inability to recognize what truly mattered. I rebuilt my life. I continued. Not because of what you did, but despite it. I found a woman who loves me completely, who would never abandon me for social advantage or family pressure. I have 2 amazing children, a successful company, and a life filled with genuine relationships. Margaret wiped at her eyes. You deserved all of this, Mason. We were terribly wrong about you. I stood up, suddenly needing space from the intensity of the conversation. If you had come to me with honesty from the beginning, acknowledged your wrongdoing without an ulterior motive, perhaps I could believe in your sincerity now. But you came because you need something from me. That makes your apologies suspect at best. That is fair, Robert acknowledged, his shoulders slumping further. We have given you every reason to doubt our sincerity. What will you do? I asked. If I decide not to help you. The 3 exchanged glances before Elizabeth answered. We will lose the last property we own. My parents will likely have to declare bankruptcy. I will try to find work, though my resume has a 12-year gap. Despite everything, I felt no pleasure in their desperation. I had long ago moved past the desire for revenge or their suffering. What I felt instead was a profound gratitude that their actions, however painful at the time, had ultimately led me to the life I now cherished. I heard Sophia's footsteps in the hallway and turned as she re-entered the room. With a glance, she assessed the situation and came to stand beside me, her presence a reminder of everything I had gained. Have you reached a decision? She asked quietly. Almost, I replied, then turned back to my unexpected visitors. I have one more question. What did you honestly expect to find when you tracked me down? The truth, please. Elizabeth hesitated, then admitted. Part of me hoped you might still be single. That perhaps we could reconnect somehow. Even after what you did? I asked incredulously. People make mistakes, she said defensively. I thought perhaps time might have softened your feelings. And finding me happily married with children? Was a shock, she admitted. A painful one. You built the life we once planned together, just with someone else. With someone who deserves him. Sophia interjected, her voice calm but firm. Someone who would never abandon him days before their wedding for an ex-boyfriend with a fabricated illness. Elizabeth flinched at the direct statement of her actions. You are right, she acknowledged. I did not deserve Mason then, and I certainly do not deserve his help now. But we truly have nowhere else to turn. I exchanged a glance with Sophia, who gave me a subtle nod of support for whatever decision I might make. In that moment, I felt incredibly fortunate to have a partner who trusted me completely, even in such an unusual situation. I will help you, I said finally. But not in the way you are asking. The relief on their faces quickly gave way to confusion as I continued. I will not give you $50,000, I clarified. But I will offer you $10,000 as a loan, with a formal contract specifying repayment terms. Additionally, I will connect you with a financial advisor who specializes in rebuilding after bankruptcy. Robert began to protest, but I held up my hand to stop him. Those are my terms. They are non-negotiable. The loan comes with conditions. You must attend financial counseling, Elizabeth must enroll in courses to update her professional skills, and you must respect the boundaries I established today. What boundaries? Elizabeth asked hesitantly. This is not a reconciliation, I stated firmly. This is not the beginning of a friendship or ongoing relationship of any kind. I am helping you because it is the right thing to do, not because I forgive what happened or wish to maintain contact. Margaret nodded slowly. We understand. Do you? I challenged. Because showing up at my home unannounced suggests otherwise. Any future communication will be through my attorney regarding the loan. You will not contact me directly, visit my home, or attempt to interact with my family in any way. The three nodded their agreement, though Elizabeth looked crestfallen. I realized she had indeed harbored some fantasy of reconnection, despite the obviousness of my happy marriage. There is one more thing I need from you, I added. An honest acknowledgement of what you did, and the harm it caused. Not because I need your apology after all this time, but because I believe acknowledging your actions is necessary for you to move forward. Elizabeth took a deep breath. I betrayed you in the worst possible way. I abandoned our relationship days before our wedding for an ex-boyfriend who was lying about being ill. I chose social advantage and family approval over genuine love and commitment. My selfishness and cowardice caused you immense pain, and nothing I can say now will undo that damage. I am deeply, truly sorry, Mason. Margaret spoke next. We encouraged our daughter's worst impulses out of snobbery and social ambition. We treated you disrespectfully despite your obvious qualities because you did not come from the right background. Our poor judgment and prejudice cost our daughter a good man and ultimately led to our current circumstances. Robert completed the acknowledgments. I was wrong about you, Mason. Catastrophically wrong. The qualities I dismissed, your work ethic, your integrity, your resilience, were precisely what made you successful while Ryan's inherited advantages led to failure. I apologize for my arrogance and the pain our family caused you. Their words, though 12 years too late, offered a kind of closure I had not realized I still needed. The anger and hurt that had once consumed me were long gone, replaced by the fullness of the life I had built. But hearing them acknowledge their actions validated the pain I had experienced and the effort required to overcome it. Thank you for your honesty, I said. I will have my attorney draw up the loan paperwork. In the meantime, I will make a hotel reservation for you for the next week, paid in advance, to give you a stable base while you begin to make arrangements. Relief flooded their faces at this unexpected additional assistance. Elizabeth started to rise, perhaps to embrace me, but I stepped back subtly, maintaining the physical distance that matched our emotional reality. I will see you out now, I said, moving toward the door. My attorney will contact you tomorrow with the paperwork. As they prepared to leave, Elizabeth paused. May I say goodbye to you privately for a moment? I glanced at Sophia, who nodded slightly and moved toward the kitchen, giving us space. What is it? I asked when we were alone in the foyer. I need you to know something, Elizabeth said, her voice barely above a whisper. Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. Not because of how things turned out with Ryan, but because I threw away something genuine and valuable for something shallow and ultimately false. Elizabeth, I began, but she continued. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But I want you to know that I have lived with the consequences of my choice every day. And seeing you now, successful, happy, with a beautiful family, I am genuinely glad that at least one of us found the happiness we once planned together. Her words seemed sincere, her regret genuine. For a moment, I glimpsed the woman I had once loved, before ambition and social pressure had revealed her character flaws. I wish you well, Elizabeth, I said honestly. I hope you find your way forward from here. You are happy? She asked, searching my face. Truly? Completely, I confirmed without hesitation. Sophia is everything I could want in a partner, and our children bring me joy every day. My life turned out exactly as it should have. She nodded, accepting this truth. Thank you for helping us despite everything. It shows the kind of man you always were, the man I was too foolish to recognize. After they departed, I found Sophia in the kitchen, finishing the pancakes with the children. She looked up as I entered, her eyes questioning. They are gone, I confirmed. I offered them limited help with strict conditions. I trust your judgment, she said simply, flipping a pancake. You have the biggest heart of anyone I know. Later that evening, after the children were in bed, Sophia and I sat on our back porch, watching the sunset over the distant mountains. Are you okay? She asked, her hand warm in mine. That must have been surreal. It was, I admitted. For years I imagined what I would say if I ever saw Elizabeth again. I rehearsed speeches, imagined dramatic confrontations. But when it actually happened, none of that seemed important. What changed? Sophia asked. I did, I realized. The pain she caused no longer defines me. Seeing her today, I felt nothing but gratitude for the path that led me to you and our children. Sophia leaned against my shoulder. Their appearance today changes nothing about our life. No, I agreed. If anything, it reinforced how fortunate I am. Their actions 12 years ago seemed like the end of my world. Instead, they were the beginning of something far better than I could have imagined. As we sat together in comfortable silence, I reflected on the long journey from betrayal to healing, from despair to profound happiness. Elizabeth's appearance had proven what I had suspected for years. True healing is not about forgetting the past or even forgiving those who hurt you. It is about building a life so full and meaningful that the pain becomes merely a chapter in your story, not its defining feature. What are you thinking about? Sophia asked, noticing my thoughtful expression. About how sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us exactly where we need to be, I replied, drawing her closer. And how grateful I am for this life we have built together. The next day, I fulfilled my promise, arranging the loan and hotel accommodations through my attorney. I did not see Elizabeth or her parents again, though I received confirmation that they had accepted the terms and begun financial counseling. Whatever path their lives took from there was their own journey, separate from mine. In the months that followed, I found myself appreciating my family and life with renewed awareness. Each pancake Sunday, each bedtime story, each quiet moment with Sophia became more precious for the reminder of how easily life could have taken a different turn. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led you to something better? Or found that an event you thought was the worst thing possible turned out to be a blessing in disguise? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and renewal. And if you know someone who might be struggling with betrayal or difficult life transitions, share this video as a reminder that sometimes our most painful chapters lead to our most beautiful stories. Thank you for listening, and remember, true happiness often awaits on unexpected paths.